Hello everyone, and welcome back. Quick question, have you ever thought your own relationship rules were a little weird? Well, buckle up, because compared to some real marriage laws around the world, your no pizza in bed policy suddenly looks like genius legislation. Imagine this. At law number 7, we'll learn about a place where men could literally sue their fiancé if she changed her mind. At law number 24, we will discover a country where you can be fined for forgetting your wife's birthday, talk about legal pressure, and at law number 41, we will meet a town that actually banned mustachioed men from kissing women. Yes, seriously, these laws are real, they are bizarre, and they will make you laugh out loud. So stick around, because today we are counting down the 50 dumbest marriage laws ever written. And hey, do not forget to subscribe, because you do not want to miss our next ridiculous countdown. 1. Married by proxy in Montana, USA. In Montana, it is perfectly legal for two people to get married without either of them being there. They can send stand-ins called proxies. If both partners are absent, they call it a double proxy marriage. The law started to help soldiers marry while deployed, but it still exists today. Picture this: two strangers, maybe a substitute teacher and a mailman, saying "I do" on your behalf. You could literally meet your spouse for the first time after you are already married. That is not romance. That is outsourcing. 2. Forgetting your wife's birthday in Samoa. In Samoa, a husband can actually be punished for forgetting his wife's birthday. Forget gifts, forget flowers. Forgetfulness itself is the crime. Imagine standing in a courtroom as the judge says, "So, Mr. Smith, no cake, no card, no nothing." It makes marriage sound less like love and more like living with a very strict alarm clock. Husbands in Samoa probably walk around with 5 reminders on their phone, 2 calendars on the wall, and sticky notes on the fridge just in case. 3. Marrying a dead person in France. France allows posthumous marriage. With presidential approval, you can marry someone who has already passed away, provided the intent to marry was clear. It started during wartime, when fiancés lost their partners in battle. Sweet on paper, but picture the wedding. One side of the aisle is full, the other side is empty. The vows feel like talking into an answering machine. Even the cake would look lonely, one half eaten and the other half perfectly preserved. 4. No kissing with a mustache. In Michigan, USA. Some towns in Michigan once banned mustached men from kissing women. Maybe lawmakers feared germs, or maybe they just hated ticklish lips. Imagine an officer bursting into a restaurant yelling, "Step away from the lady, sir. Your mustache is contraband." The law is not enforced anymore, but the image of Cupid shaving with an electric razor still lingers. 5. Only one divorce allowed in the Philippines. In the Philippines, divorce is almost entirely illegal. Most couples are stuck with annulments, separations, or nothing at all. Once you are married, you are pretty much locked in. It is like getting one scratch card for life. No refunds, and no due. Romantic? Maybe risky. Absolutely. Imagine buying a lifetime subscription with no cancel button. That is marriage in the Philippines. 6. Marrying your cousin. In some U.S. states. In several American states, it is still legal to marry your first cousin. Laws vary, but in places like Tennessee, you can marry a cousin with no problem. Some states even allow cousin marriage if you can prove infertility, which is the least romantic marriage license requirement ever. Imagine showing up to City Hall with a doctor's note. "Yes, we checked. They cannot have kids. Please approve this wedding." Family reunions suddenly look like speed dating events. 7. Breach of promise laws in the USA. Until recently, some U.S. states allowed lawsuits for breach of promise. Translation: if you got engaged and then called it off, your ex could sue you for breaking your promise to marry. Imagine being dragged into court because you decided you were not ready to deal with their pet iguana. Engagement rings became exhibits, and juries had to decide whether someone's cold feet were legally punishable. It is like turning a breakup into a season finale of Judge Judy. 8. The age limit in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia once had no official minimum marriage age. Courts sometimes approved marriages for girls as young as 10 or 12, although reforms have introduced restrictions. The fact that it was ever legal shows how absurdly outdated some laws can be. Imagine being a child, worrying about homework one moment and wedding vows the next. That is not romance. It is a legal loophole big enough to drive a camel through. 9. 9. Shoes required in Virginia weddings. In Virginia, there was once a rule that you could not get married without shoes. Apparently, barefoot brides and grooms were too scandalous for the law. Imagine standing at the altar and realizing you left your shoes at home. The ceremony screeches to a halt. The justice of the peace says, "Sorry folks, no shoes, no vows, no service." Somewhere in Virginia history, a barefoot groom ruined it for everybody. 10 Wisconsin cheese law weddings. In Wisconsin, the land of cheese, there were laws requiring restaurants to serve cheese and butter with every meal. Now imagine applying that to weddings. Technically, couples could be denied wedding meals if cheese was missing. A marriage in Wisconsin without cheddar, illegal. Picture a bride storming out because the buffet skipped the Gouda. In Wisconsin, love may fade, but dairy is forever. 11. No married women skydiving on Sundays. In Florida, USA. In some parts of Florida, a married woman was once prohibited from parachuting on Sundays. Why? Nobody knows. Maybe lawmakers thought church and skydiving should not mix. Imagine a woman telling her husband, "Honey, I am going skydiving," and he replies, "Sorry, dear, the government says no unless it is Monday." The irony: single women could technically leap all they wanted. Nothing says equality like gravity having a curfew. 12. Marriage approval by the king in Swaziland. Eswatini. In Swaziland, women once needed the king's approval to marry foreigners. That meant your entire love life could be vetoed by royalty. Imagine planning the perfect wedding, only to have the king say, "Nah, I do not like his haircut." Suddenly, romance depends on the monarch's mood. It is like Tinder, but instead of swiping left or right, the king waves his scepter. 13. Hotel room marriage in Las Vegas, USA. Las Vegas is famous for quick weddings, but some hotel chapels once offered marriages without witnesses, performed in under 10 minutes. The law technically allowed it. Imagine ordering room service and marriage vows at the same time. Yes, I'll take the chicken Alfredo. And also eternal commitment to Susan. The city that runs on slot machines also made matrimony feel like pulling a lever and hoping for 3 cherries in a row. 14. Marriage by telephone in California, USA. California once recognized marriages conducted over the telephone for soldiers overseas. That means you could literally say "I do" with bad reception and a dropped call. Picture a bride screaming, "Do you take this man?" and the groom replying, "Can you hear me now?" in a crackly voice. It sounds like a Verizon commercial gone rogue. Romantic? Yes. Stable? Not so much. 15. No public dancing after marriage in Afghanistan. At certain times in Afghanistan's history, strict interpretations of religious law banned public wedding dancing. Imagine inviting everyone to your big day and then being told to sit quietly in rows. No music, no rhythm, just polite nodding. A reception without dancing is basically just an awkward business meeting with cake. Couples probably whispered, "Honey, let's at least tap our toes under the table." 16. Marriage by kidnapping in Kyrgyzstan. In Kyrgyzstan, a tradition known as bride kidnapping was once tolerated. A man could abduct a woman and force her into marriage negotiations. Laws have cracked down, but the fact it was accepted shows how absurd cultural marriage laws can be. Imagine going on a normal walk and someone says, "Surprise, you are now my fiancé." It turns romance into a crime scene. Not exactly the kind of memory you want in a wedding scrapbook. 17. Only one wife, but unlimited girlfriends. In Cameroon, men are limited to one legal wife, but no laws stop them from having countless girlfriends. Marriage paperwork is strict, but side romances are wide open. Imagine a government official saying, "Sir, your marriage license is valid, but your girlfriend collection has no upper limit." It sounds less like law and more like a loyalty program. One official wife, unlimited trial versions. 18. No drunk weddings in Australia. In some Australian states, marriages are void if one or both partners are intoxicated. The law makes sense in theory, but imagine telling tipsy newlyweds their vows are invalid because they slurred "I do" into "I donut" somewhere. A couple woke up the next day thinking they were married, only to be told they were just legally hungover. Australia basically outlawed every romantic comedy plot ever filmed. 19. Mother-in-law ban in China. In some parts of China's history, there were bans on men marrying their mothers-in-law after a wife died. This law existed because some widowers actually tried it. Picture a man mourning his wife and then saying, "You know what? Her mom Guam is pretty nice. Lawmakers had to step in to say, "Sir, absolutely not." It is like a soap opera plotline written into the legal code. 20. No remarriage for 3 years in Japan. At one point in Japan, women had to wait 6 months to 3 years after a divorce before they could remarry. The idea was to prevent paternity confusion, but it punished women unfairly. Imagine finishing a painful divorce, ready to move on, and the government says, "Sorry, take a number. Wait in line." It turned personal healing into a DMV experience. Meanwhile, men had no such restrictions. Equality clearly took a coffee break. 21. No marriage if you are ugly in Guam. Guam once had a bizarre practice where professional bridesmaids were hired to test a groom's courage. The twist? Some legends claim men were discouraged from marrying unattractive women, with laws indirectly reinforcing beauty standards. Imagine love reduced to a beauty pageant. Picture a judge holding up scorecards. She's an 8, marriage approved. It makes for better or worse sound optional. 22. Paying the bride price in Kenya. In Kenya, traditional law requires a man to pay a dowry, often in livestock, before marriage. The practice is still common, though not always enforced legally. Imagine calculating your net worth in goats, darling. You are worth at least 12 goats and a bonus cow. While symbolic, the system turns romance into a shopping trip at the barn. Love may be priceless, but apparently cows have a fixed rate. 23. No married women drinking wine in ancient Rome. In ancient Rome, married women could be punished, even executed, for drinking wine. Husbands had the right to discipline wives caught sipping. Imagine a secret Roman wine speakeasy where women whispered, "Quick, pass the Merlot," before the husband gets home. The law turned Chardonnay into contraband. Forget romance. It was more like prohibition with togas. 24. Forgetting your anniversary in Germany. Bavaria. In some Bavarian towns, husbands could be fined for forgetting wedding anniversaries. Judges treated it as a marital crime. Imagine standing in court and the clerk announces, "Case number 42. Husband forgot flowers." The fine was not huge, but the humiliation priceless. It is like a legal version of sleeping on the couch. Husbands learned quickly. Anniversaries are not optional. They are survival drills. 25. No marriage without parental consent in India. In parts of India, even adult couples have faced restrictions if families disapprove, with honor laws sometimes enforced by local councils. Imagine being 30 years old and still needing mom's permission slip for marriage. The law basically turned wedding planning into a high school field trip. Lovebirds had to outwit not just disapproving parents, but entire neighborhood committees armed with gossip. 26. Marrying trees in India. In some Indian traditions, women deemed Manglik, born under unlucky astrological signs, were required to first marry a tree before marrying a man. The tree marriage was meant to break the curse. Imagine explaining that. "Yes, I was married before, but my spouse was an oak." The honeymoon involved fertilizer. Once the ritual was complete, the tree was often cut down, which is the least romantic divorce in history. 27. No marriage to ghosts in China. China had a tradition of ghost marriages, where families arranged for their deceased children to wed other deceased individuals. The practice became so problematic that the government banned it. Imagine a matchmaking service for the afterlife. Families exchanged photos, not for dating apps, but for funeral rites. It was less Tinder, more spirit swiping. Romance truly went beyond the grave. 28. Marriage to a corpse in Sudan. In Sudan, there were cases where tribal customs allowed marriage ceremonies involving corpses, particularly to preserve family honor. Imagine planning a wedding where the groom arrives in a coffin, guests bring sympathy cards and wedding gifts at the same time. It sounds more like a horror movie than a ceremony, yet it was once culturally accepted. 29. No interfaith marriages in some Middle Eastern countries. In certain Middle Eastern nations, marriage laws forbid Muslim women from marrying outside their religion, while Muslim men can. The law is enforced in various ways, often making relationships impossible. Imagine being told, "Love is fine as long as it fits the state's religious checkbox." It is like downloading love with a compatibility error message. "Sorry, system does not support this format." 30. Marriage license expiration. In South Carolina, USA. At one point, South Carolina marriage licenses had strict expiration dates. If you did not marry within within a short window, the license was void. Imagine planning a wedding and realizing you missed the deadline. Sorry, folks, the license expired yesterday. Please reschedule for next year. It makes marriage feel like a carton of milk. Check the date before you say I do. 31. No interracial marriage in the USA historical. For decades, many U.S. states had laws banning interracial marriage, overturned only in 1967 with the Supreme Court case Loving v. Virginia. Imagine being told love was illegal because of skin color. Police actually raided homes to enforce it. The irony, the couple who ended the ban were literally named Loving. It is one of those moments where history writes its own punchline. 32. No marriage without dental exams in South Korea. At one point, South Korea required medical certificates, including dental exams, before issuing marriage licenses. The idea was to prove health, but imagine explaining your wedding delay. Sorry, folks, the groom has a cavity, so the ceremony is postponed. Love may be blind, but apparently it checks your molars first. 33. No marriage to Canadians in Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan briefly banned citizens from marrying foreigners without government approval, with Canada humorously singled out in some reports. Imagine falling in love abroad, only to be told, sorry, not that country. Pick another passport. It turned romance into a geopolitical strategy game. Love by visa type only. 34. Ban on intercaste marriages in Nepal. Historic. Historically, Nepal forbade marriages between castes, punishing couples who crossed the lines. Imagine falling in love only to have the law say, sorry, wrong category, no mixing allowed. It was less about love and more about sorting. People like library books. Thankfully, reforms changed it, but for centuries, Cupid had to carry a caste chart. 35. No marriage between divorcees in Vatican City. In Vatican City, marriage is a strictly religious affair. If you are divorced, remarriage is not recognized at all, unless the first marriage is an. Imagine being told your new vows simply do not count because Rome says so. It is like updating your relationship status and the system refusing to save it. 36. Marriage by purchase. In Ethiopia historic. In some Ethiopian traditions, marriage involved literal purchase, with men paying a bride price and sometimes treating the bride as property. Imagine love negotiated like buying a used car. She is great, low mileage, but does she come with warranties? It was love by transaction, not affection, and it reduced weddings to business deals. 37. Only monks could approve marriage in medieval Europe. In parts of medieval Europe, only monks could officiate marriages, and sometimes only in monasteries. Imagine hauling all your guests into a stone abbey just to hear vows. The setting was gorgeous, sure, but it turned weddings into a spiritual monopoly. Priests had the power to decide if love was valid, making Cupid look like a trainee. 38. Marriage as punishment in England. In 18th century England, some criminals were given a choice: jail or marriage to their victim. Imagine stealing bread and being told, marry her or go to prison. The idea of forced matrimony as punishment made weddings feel like sentencing hearings. Love may conquer all, but in this case, it came with handcuffs. 39. No marriage for the poor in England. Historic. At one point, England restricted marriage for people on welfare unless they had permission from local officials. Imagine being told you are too broke to wed. It was like a financial background check on romance. Sorry, you failed the credit test for love. Bureaucrats essentially acted as bouncers at Cupid's nightclub. 40. Marriage by abduction in Scotland. Historic. In medieval Scotland, handfasting sometimes blurred into abduction, where men carried off brides to force marriages. Think Braveheart meets Bad Romance. The practice was outlawed, but it lived on in stories where love and kidnapping awkwardly shared the same stage. Imagine explaining to your kids, yes, daddy swept mommy off her feet, literally in a burlap sack. 41. No mustached men kissing women in Eureka, Nevada, USA. In Eureka, Nevada, a law once made it illegal for men with mustaches to kiss women. Maybe lawmakers thought whiskers were hazardous to romance. Imagine an officer shouting, "Sir, step away from the lady. Your mustache is a public menace." Cupid himself would have needed a razor. It turned kissing into a crime scene with lip hair as evidence. 42. No double cousin marriages in North Carolina, USA. USA. North Carolina allowed first cousins to marry, but banned double cousin marriages. That means if two siblings from one family married two siblings from another family, their kids could not marry each other. Confused yet? Imagine drawing a giant family tree that looks like spaghetti. Then the law steps in with scissors. It is like genealogy police saying, sorry, too many branches crossed. 43. Marriage ban for redheads in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptians once discriminated against red-haired people in certain marriages, believing red hair was unlucky. Imagine finding the love of your life, only for priests to say, nope, ginger equals cursed. It turned natural hair color into a deal breaker. Forget till death do us part. This was more like till your hair dye runs out. 44. No marriage without a blood test in the USA. Historic. Many U.S. states once required blood tests for diseases like syphilis before marriage licenses were issued. The idea was medical safety, but it made romance feel like a lab appointment. Imagine proposing with roses in one hand and a test tube in the other, darling. Let's check our blood before forever. By the 1980s, most states dropped the law, but for decades, love required lab work. 45. Marriage in prison in Italy. In Italy, inmates can marry while serving time, but ceremonies often happen in visiting rooms. Imagine exchanging vows under fluorescent lights while guards stand by with clipboards. Do you take this man? And also promise not to break parole. It is not exactly a fairy tale setting unless your fairy tale involves handcuffs. 46. No marriage to aliens in the USA. Arizona rumor. An old Arizona rumor claims state law once prohibited marriage to extraterrestrials. While never enforced, it became a running joke. Imagine lawyers debating whether Martians need visas. Your Honor, he may be from Mars, but he truly loves her. Even Area 51 would look like a Vegas chapel compared to that. 47. No marriage without bride's shoes in Russia. In some Russian traditions, weddings could not proceed until the groom paid ransom for the bride's shoes, sometimes literally buying them back. Imagine a best man sneaking into the kitchen to negotiate footwear. Love was put on hold until someone coughed up rubles for high heels. Cinderella would have thrived under Russian law. 48. Marriage ban on Mondays in Indonesia. Historic. Certain regions in Indonesia once forbade weddings on Mondays, believing the day unlucky. Imagine planning everything flowers, food, guests only to be told, sorry, come back Tuesday. It turned wedding scheduling into a game of superstitious bingo. No Monday, no Friday, maybe Saturday if the moon looks good. Wedding planners must have pulled their hair out. 49. Marriage by lottery in ancient Greece. In some ancient Greek communities, marriages were decided by lottery. Imagine your name tossed into a bowl, and whoever you matched with became your spouse. It was less love at first sight and more congratulations. Here is your lifetime roommate. Cupid was replaced by a bingo caller. B12. You are now married to Stephanie. 50. No marriage without government song in North Korea. In North Korea, weddings often require state approval and must include patriotic songs. Imagine standing at the altar, trying to say vows, while a marching anthem blares in the background. The state literally inserts itself into your romance soundtrack. Forget Here Comes the Bride. Instead, it is Here Comes the Dictator. Romantic? Not quite. Memorable? Absolutely. And that is it. 50 of the dumbest, strangest, and most jaw-dropping marriage laws humanity has ever dreamed up. From mustache bans to marrying trees, from birthday fines to ghost weddings. These rules prove that love might be eternal, but lawmakers are not always logical. What is the takeaway here? Maybe that, no matter how weird your own marriage feels, at least you are not paying a goat dowry or being told your anniversary forgetfulness is a crime. Compared to these laws, even leaving socks on the floor looks like pure romance. Maybe next time we look at 50 bizarre laws about work and jobs. Or perhaps we explore 50 unbelievable laws about schools and education. Or maybe we reveal 50 outrageous laws about fashion and clothing. Until then, like, subscribe, and tell me which marriage law left you the most shocked.